One day, when my husband opened the front door to go to work, he found several large, strange men standing there, as though they were waiting specifically for him. They showed him their police identification badges.
If you wouldn't mind coming with us, Mr. Emerson, we'd like to ask you a few questions.
Surrounded by multiple large police officers, my husband started to panic and shouted at me inside the house.
Hey, come here a minute. I think I'm in big trouble for some reason.
I came out from the back of the house, and one of the policemen said to me,
If you would be so kind, ma'am.
"I've been expecting you. My name is Rebecca, and I'm a 32-year-old office woman. I got married 3 years ago to my husband, Sheldon, who's the same age as me. Since we worked together in the same department, we gradually became aware of each other and began to develop a mutual liking. He eventually confessed he had feelings for me and asked me to be his girlfriend, to which I accepted. After 22 months of being together, we tied the knot. Sheldon was popular among the women in the company because of his good looks and good-natured personality. When it came to looks, he looked a bit like a taller, more buff version of RDJ, and his personality perfectly balanced kindness and compassion with responsibility and leadership. He took charge pretty quickly whenever something had to be done, but he never showed any frustration with anyone, even if they made a couple of mistakes or something like that. At the time, everyone was envious of me for being his girl, and I was very happy. What is it about me that you like so much, Sheldon? What made you want to be mine?
What made you want to be mine? Oh, jeez, where do I even begin? Well, I'd say you're very active, and you're fun to be with. Those traits in women leave me head over heels, I tell you what.
I thought it was because I'm cute.
Oh, of course you're cute.
When we first got married, we spent every weekend attending events and going on trips. At first, we enjoyed it very much, but gradually, I began to worry that such extravagance would put a strain on the family budget. This concern grew with time, and it came to a point where I just couldn't leave it alone anymore. I went to talk to Sheldon about it, first by being a bit indirect.
Hey, this restaurant has a good reputation for dinner. Let's go on our next vacation.
I want to relax at home on my day off, and I'll cook a nice meal at home.
Wait, what? I'm honestly shocked, Rebecca. It's not like you to stay cooped up at home on your days off.
I don't mean to be cooped up. There's just plenty of stuff to do at home. We could have a movie marathon, or we could invite people over for dinner, or something.
I like spending my days off going out and trying out new things. If you want to be all closed up at home today, I'll go to that restaurant on my own then.
Wait, what? Even after I became reluctant to go out with him, he still went out every weekend. I supposed being indirect about it wouldn't do any good at all. I decided to directly tell Sheldon about my concerns about money and to cut back on his spending. You go out every day off you get, but are you okay with it?
Am I okay with it? Okay with what exactly?
Our savings, honey. All those trips you take and all those nice restaurants you go to, they cost quite a bit after a while, don't they?
Well, I guess. But there are things we can do now that we can't do later on when life catches up to it.
I think saving money is also a big thing we shouldn't forget when it comes to things we can only do right now. We do plan on having children one day, right? It would be nice to have a good amount of money saved up for our future. I'll be really frank here. I worry about how you spend money.
The hell? How I spend my money shouldn't be any of your frickin' business. Damn. I didn't think you had such a stingy and stained personality, for real.
In this manner, my husband treated my concerns for our family's finances as though it was nothing important. I began to be troubled by the difference in financial sense between me and my husband, and our affection as a couple rapidly cooled down. By the 3rd year of our marriage, we were basically a couple because we legally still were. The love and the attachment we had for each other once upon a time was nowhere to be found. Once I realized that we'd began to drift apart, I resigned from the company and changed jobs. The main reason was because if we worked for the same department of the same company, then we just couldn't avoid seeing each other. Another reason was because people had begun to notice that our lifestyles were vastly different, and suspect that things weren't going too well. He still goes shopping on weekends and on his days off, or maybe he goes drinking or traveling, or even all of the above. We've long since stopped meddling in each other's affairs, but the occasional reminder letter in the mailbox addressed to my husband still made me extremely uneasy about the situation. I know it's none of my business, but this is a demand letter, isn't it? Sheldon, do you owe some money? Are you in debt? Why have I received 4 letters of demand within the last 3 months?
Like you just said, Rebecca, it's none of your frickin' business. I'm doing just fine, and I'll pay all this at once in a couple of days.
I used to work for the same company that he works for, so I know what his salary is. And I can confidently say that his salary is nowhere near anything enough to cover all this ridiculously lavish spending. Then he did the unthinkable and bought a foreign luxury car. Astonished is too mild a word to describe the tsunami of shock and surprise I experienced when I discovered he'd actually bought a goddamn Mercedes. Perhaps gobsmacked is more accurate? What the heck is this? Did you buy this? Sheldon, are you kidding me?
Nice car, isn't it?
How the hell were you able to afford this? Did you get approved for a car loan or something? I guess he didn't like the fact I kept on talking about how he bought it instead of how good the car looked. He just clicked his tongue in annoyance and retorted.
You're so quick to say that, damn it. Honestly, I'm embarrassed I ever expected something different from you. I put all my bonus money to buying this frickin' beauty. I never let a chance to buy something I want slip through my fingers.
I was so disgusted by his nonchalant ranting and raving. If his statement of putting his entire bonus into buying the car was true, then that could only mean one thing. His savings hit rock bottom and continued to dig deeper. I wondered how he was going to make ends meet when I was certain he had already lost his credit card privileges. Or was there some reason not to worry about money? Was there some secret that my husband was keeping from me? It pained me a little bit, but I could not stop my suspicions about my husband's actions from welling up inside. There were times I actually feared he was in cahoots with some black market organization and somehow got his hands on money ill-made by selling illegal drugs or something like that. One day, while my husband was taking a bath, I saw a message had reached his phone. When I saw the message, which said, "Hey, when can we see each other again?" with a teary-eyed emoji at the end of it, I felt that the suspicion I had been harboring toward my husband had become something more than an idea. It had become something real. The message was no doubt from someone who had a special relationship with my husband. A woman's intuition told me so. In other words, my husband is having an affair. I struggled to resist the urge to question my husband right then and there, but I knew I had to be calm and get confirmational evidence supporting what I thought was going on. And, like I said, there were several other things besides the affair that made me suspicious about my husband. His spending habits were completely out of the ordinary, like that luxury car. He must be in big financial trouble. I could just feel it in my bones. And I had a feeling that eventually these things would eventually rain consequences down upon me as well. I decided that I should hire a professional, even if it would cost a little more, and I quickly hired a detective agency to investigate my husband's behavior. But while waiting for the results of the detective's investigation, the hunch that something was going to happen to me was justified, because I became involved in a very spooky incident a couple of days after I filled the request to the agency. On the way home from work one day, I was approached by a stranger. "Are you Miss Rebecca, who works for AAA Trades Incorporated? Excuse me, but may I ask who I'm talking to?" The woman was about my age, but honestly, in her eyes as she glared at me made me fear for my life for a brief instant. "I'm Owen's wife. That should be enough to help you know who you're talking to." "Owen? I'm terribly sorry, ma'am, but you must be mistaking me for someone else. I don't know anyone named Owen, and I don't recognize you either. I'm sorry, and good day to you. I had no idea who she was or who this Owen was, so I proceeded to walk quickly, as though I was running away. As I scampered away, I sneaked a glance behind me and found the woman staring at me. I kept watching her until I turned onto another road, and she disappeared out of my sight. I did indeed change jobs, and I now work for AAA Trades Incorporated. It's a small company, and there are no other employees with the same name as mine, Rebecca. The woman seemed to know me, somehow, but it was not a mutual recognition. I didn't know who she was, nor did I know who this husband of hers was. I don't even know why she addressed herself as Owen's wife, when she could have stated her name and make things easier. That was a really creepy experience, needless to say, and I was so shook by that encounter I couldn't sleep well that night. A few days later, the detective agency contacted me, saying they came back with some interesting findings. I made an appointment for the evening, and a kind, smoky gentleman went on to explain a lot of things. Lieutenant Pierce handed me a few photographs of my husband walking downtown with a young woman in fancy clothes, with his arm around her shoulders. There was also a close-up photograph of the woman, and my answer to his question of whether or not I recognized her was that I didn't. There were also pictures of them going in and out of a hotel. Lieutenant Pierce explained, "There is no doubt that your husband is having an affair with this woman, whose identity is yet to be confirmed, Mrs. Emerson." I hung my head. After a few moments of silence, he continued, "This woman has been having relations with several men, all of whom are married, and it seems that after a certain period of time, she takes money from them." She takes money from them? However do you mean? "She's making a living through trickery and deceit, it would seem, Mrs. Emerson. I'm afraid your husband's gotten entwined with a woman whose nature appears to be in the gray, if not in the black." My husband's a spendthrift as well? Do you think there's a connection between his ridiculous spending habits and this woman that appears to siphon money from her lovers? You've only hired us to launch an investigation against the possibility of your husband having an affair, Mrs. Emerson. We can only go so far, and to launch another investigation into the nature of who this woman is may not be what you're looking for here. Lieutenant Pierce was right. I had only hired his agency to confirm or disprove the idea that Sheldon was indeed cheating on me, and they did a fantastic job. I also had a very bad feeling about this woman. The fact that Lieutenant Pierce had discovered she had multiple sexual partners from which she pretty much stole money was something I could not disregard, considering it probably affected me directly through my husband. Two things were clear in my mind. Sheldon was indeed having an affair, and this young woman, whom he was having it with, was making money in some shady way, with my husband's spending related to it. I knew my husband was doing something wrong, besides cheating on his wife. And now came the hard part that I was always scared to ask myself. How should I confront my husband with the results of this investigation? Now that I had the evidence to confirm Sheldon's affair, I couldn't run away from that question any longer, and I spent days worrying about how to confront the situation and get out of it safe and sound. One day, after a long period of depressed anxiety, I was summoned to my boss's office at work. He said to me in a tone of voice that made it sound like it was difficult for him to say it.
"Have you noticed anything unusual around you lately?"
"Something unusual, sir? I'm afraid I don't quite understand what you mean."
To tell you the truth, we received this letter in the mail this morning.
Mr. Yates handed me an envelope that already been slit open, and inside it was a photograph. I was astonished when I saw it. It was a picture of me, with the words, "Sanction the Adulteress," written on it in ominous black ink. "Mr. Yates, sir, I don't know what this is. I swear on my life and career, I'm not having an affair." I desperately tried to convince him that I was being falsely accused of adultery. He was skeptical at best.
Okay, Emerson. We understand. Just promise me you won't act in a way to potentially incur someone's grudge, alright?
He let me off the hook and sent me back to my desk. But I knew he didn't entirely believe me. If I had to quit this company, where I had just gotten a new job, because of something like this, I had no idea what would happen to me in the future. Would I be able to get another job? Would this incident go on my resume, and thus every application would be rejected? Would I be homeless and penniless by the time it was around this time next year? These worrying questions tormented me for the rest of the day. But then I suddenly remembered the woman I met on the way home from work a few days prior. What was it she said? She was someone's wife? Oh, yes! She said she was Owen's wife! It was as if she thought I was a close, intimate acquaintance of her husband's. Then something clicked in my mind. The photograph that Mr. Yates had shown me, the one with the ominous message on the back of it, showing me wearing the same clothes I was wearing the day I met this woman. In other words, she was the one that had taken it, which meant that she was the one who sent the letter to my office. But why? I don't know her husband, let alone have an affair with him. Walking home from work that evening, thinking about all of this, and what it could mean to me in my future, when I saw her again. This time she was with a man. Perhaps he was that husband of hers. Needless to say, I didn't recognize him. I immediately ran up to her. "What the hell were you doing, woman? Sending those bullshit letters to my office? Who do you think you are?" I interrogated her, but then the woman yelled back at me. "We all know what kind of bullshit you've been up to, bitch. Give back the money out of which you swindled Owen." Then the man called Owen opened his mouth and pointed at me. "What the frick? The hell do you mean this isn't her? What the hell's going on?" We decided to go into a nearby coffee shop to calm down and discuss the confusion. What the woman told me was astonishing. This woman, whose husband was named Owen, was named Flavia. Flavia explained that Owen was having an affair with a woman who claimed to be named Rebecca, and this Rebecca worked for AAA Trades Incorporated. Of course, this is all my husband's fault for being with another woman in the first place. But one day she suddenly blackmailed him into giving her money, if he didn't want anyone to know about the affair. Evidently, this stupid bastard didn't want me to find out, so he did as he was told and paid several dozen $1,000s. As soon as I heard that, I had an idea. Yes, indeed. Perhaps this was the woman with whom Sheldon was having his affair with, the one the detective discovered when he investigated my husband. Look, isn't this the woman whom your husband was having an affair with? I showed them the 2 photographs I had gotten from Lieutenant Pierce. Owen's eyes opened wide. Flavia got angry at this and suddenly slapped him on the cheek as hard as she could. I gave her the basic information about this fake Rebecca that the detective had checked out. She said that she would go to the police and file a victim report against the woman and sue her for abuse. And she promised to explain the situation to my office, admit that she was mistaken, and that it was all a big misunderstanding, and apologize for the envelope she'd sent. Flavia then left the coffee shop, dragging her useless husband, who was insisting that the bitch was his Rebecca. All in all, it was a very productive evening. After we parted ways, I started thinking about the woman's decision to go to the police. I came to the conclusion that it was also time for me to stop worrying about everything and take matters into my own hands. It was time to decide what to do with myself. From what I've just heard from Flavia, combined with what the Lieutenant Pierce was hinting at, this woman who impersonated me was threatening the man whom she's having an affair with by posing as a married couple. And the impersonation was pretty thorough. As well, she'd taken my name and the place where I'd worked. I was terrified that if my husband was part of this evil, I would be in big trouble if I didn't do something about it as soon as possible. This fear eventually brought me to the decision to go to the police. The next day, when my husband opened the front door to go to work, he found several large, strange men standing there, as though they were waiting specifically for him.
Good morning, gentlemen. May I ask to what do I owe this visit, and more importantly, who it is I'm talking to?
They showed him their police identification badges.
If you wouldn't mind coming with us, Mr. Emerson, we'd like to ask you a few questions.
You're the police? Did I do something wrong, officer? If I did, I have no idea what exactly it was that could have been illegal.
Surrounded by multiple large police officers, my husband started to panic and shouted at me inside the house.
Hey, Rebecca? Could you come out here for a minute, please? I think I'm in big trouble for some reason.
I came out from the back of the house, and one of the policemen said to me,
If you would be so kind, ma'am.
"I've been expecting you. This is the woman in question, officer." I handed the detective's findings to the police. The police officer nodded repeatedly as he read my findings.
Oh, you must be this punk kid's real wife, Miss Rebecca Emerson, who called the police. Thank you very much for your cooperation.
Wait, the frick?
Have a good day, and I wish you happiness with the fake Rebecca Emerson. I waved them off as they took my husband away. Then came some good news and some bad news. The good news was that my husband had nothing to do with the crimes of the woman whom he was having an affair with. She had discovered that he was spending money very poorly, and she had cleverly manipulated him into directing that money to her own personal benefit. The woman had forced him into buying a foreign luxury car. Then she asked him to transfer custody of the car to her, and in order to do that, she needed my husband's name, as well as mine, our address, and our company information. And he was stupid enough to give all that information to her without second-guessing anything. Moreover, the property of the luxury car that had been bought had been confiscated by the police because it had been originally stolen. My husband didn't know about this and spent all his bonus money on it. So he was left broke and broken in multiple ways after this whole disaster. Later, the woman whom he was having an affair with and her gang were arrested. The bad news is that my husband was only interviewed by the police before being sent on his merry way. In other words, he was just a victim in this case. And that was frustrating for me. Because considering the fact that he cheated on me, I wanted him to stay in prison for the rest of his life. I then confronted him with divorce papers.
What are you doing, Rebecca? You do know I'm innocent in all of this, right?
What the hell are you on about? I know you've been cheating on me with that whore, Sheldon.
You call that cheating? None of this would have happened if you just given up on being so worried about money and spent more time with me. What did you expect me to do when I got lonely like that?
You think that's a good excuse for your freaking betrayal? I divorced my husband and filed for alimony. He spent every penny he had on the woman whom he was cheating on me with, so he worked day and night to pay me the alimony he legally owed me, so he didn't have time to go off gallivanting and playing with women anymore. I also filed a claim against the woman he was having an affair with for alimony, in addition to damages under grounds for defamation of character. The woman who had seduced Sheldon has been doing all kinds of bad things, and she's been arrested again. She's been involved in all sorts of misdeeds, including using my full name without my permission and selling stolen cars. Story tells how I was able to make eyes with my ex-husband. Being in the moment is very important, and it's often the key to living a full, happy life, but we mustn't forget that we have to be willing to make sacrifices for the benefit of our futures. And we must remember that money always comes second when it comes to human relationships. Kindness, compassion, and loyalty to each other, old and young, man and woman, white and black, tall and short, healthy and ill, happiness cannot be bought, and nothing can replace the experiences that it provides with you. Although it was a divorce that came too late, but I still have a long life ahead of me, and I will try my best to be patient, to be in the moment when needed, and to find my own happiness. Wish me luck.